Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Nun Ches Amud Aleph, starting with Nun Zayin Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom at the new Mishnah. Until now, from the beginning of the Parak Ketzad Ma'abrin Es He'orim, we've been discussing how to determine the city and expanding it to know where to then count from its borders the 2,000 amos. For example, the previous Mishnah stated, even from the borders of the actual city itself, we don't count the 2,000 amos. Rather, we then extend it from the karpef outside of the city. The karpef we define as being an area that's non-residential, usually used for purposes storing wood and such. And it's the measurement of 70 2/3 amos. So it's 70 2/3 amos by 70 2/3 amos, an area of 5,000 square amos. So only from the outside of the karpef do then we begin measuring the 2,000 amos. Our Mishnah now discusses the procedure for actually measuring the 2,000 amos. Says the Mishnah, Ein moidedin ela bechevel shel 50 amo, lo pachos v'lo yoser. We measure with a rope of exactly 50 amos, not less and not more. When we measure, so each person, one is standing on one side of the rope, while the other one is at the other end of the rope. Each one is holding the rope keneged his lave. That facilitates a person from being able to then see that it's going to be straight. And we're talking about the people who measure are the average type of person height, and therefore it's going to be more or less the same exact height, one person to the next. While he's measuring, he gets to either a valley or a geder. Here we're talking about a stone fence that fell down, so you have a mound of stones. So here you have both a decline when it comes to the valley, or you also have an incline in terms of the stone mound. So what do? It says over here, Mavliyoi v'choiz lemidosoi. Mavliyo means that you measure it, not measuring the decline going down the slope and measuring the decline and then the upcline, the incline as well. No, you measure across. That's called mavliyoi. So too when it comes to then the mound of stones, if it's too high because it's above a person's then higher than the person, then they can hold poles, each one, and then tie the rope from one pole to the other pole and measure it that way. And then it says, V'choizel lemidosoi. Over here we're talking about where if the area was beyond 50 amos, and if you would go to the area of the valley that is less than 50 amos, then you can go to that area which is more narrow, measure across, and then come back towards the city again, measuring from then onwards. Higia lahar mavliya v'choiz lemidoso. Similarly, when you get to the har, the mountain, the same protocol is that a person measures again with a 50 amal rope, one to the next, each one holding the rope from keneged liboy. And again, it's mavliya, even though, of course, the mountain has its height. We're not going to then use the slope is the measurement. We're going to try to measure across. So too, therefore, if a person cannot measure, he'll have to go to another area that is not exactly directly across from the city. He'll then go a little bit and choizer, after then making that measurement, choizer lemidosoi, then continue his measuring. On top of Nun Ches Amud Aleph, ubilvash lo yetze chus l'tchum, providing that the person does not go outside of the techum. If he goes beyond the techum, then that's going to be a problem. People will think that they're measuring is inside the techum, and that'll be a mistake. So therefore, to avoid such a problem, so you cannot go ahead and measure even though it's going to be more narrow if it's going to be outside the techum. The Mishnah continues, if you're not able to go ahead and measure across, because we're talking about a mountain that has quite a bit of height. Omer Abdostai Bayonai Mishum Rabbi Meir Shomati. He said, Bezu, in this, which we're talking about an Erev Techumim, which is Dirabonon, then we have a special kula. that means lapuke, to exclude those measurements that are going to be di'araisa, we don't have the following kula. But since we're talking about tchumim, which is dirabbanan, therefore we have the following kula that I heard, Shomati shemekadrim behorim. We pierce the horim, the mountains. Piercing refers to a process of, literally it means making a hole, which seems to be through and through of the mountain. But it means practically is that they take a chevel that is dalit amos, not 50 amos, but dalit amos, and one person stands holding it at his chest, while the next person slightly above him, then it goes to his feet, and it's measured 4 amos that way. The reason why that's being done as a kula is because then it saves all of the height of the person between, let's say, where he stands up until his chest. All of that is going to be saved in terms of the slope. Now the Gemara asks, Menohani mili, from where do we know that indeed a rope is used to make the measurements? In other words, here we're talking about, granted it's not di'araisa, but there's an asmach that we want to find to show the source of measuring with a rope. Omrav Yehuda Marav, the Omar Kro, the Pasuk states, Erech hechotzer meya be'ama, v'roichav chamishim bechamishim. In regards to the Mishkan, it's stating over here that the length of the chotzer is 100 amma, and the width is 50 amma. Amra Torah bechevel shel chamishim amma medoid. From here, we see that the Torah tells you then to then measure with 15 amma, because since it says chamishim bechamishim, it doesn't say the roichav is chamishim, it says chamishim bechamishim. This alludes to the fact that a rope of chamishim should be used to make measurement. Ask the Gemara, ha miboy le litol chamishim ulesabev chamishim. This is a reference to what the Gemara said earlier in Daf Chof Gimel Amud Aleph, Amud Beis. Let's take a quick look on Daf Chof Gimel Amud Beis. There the Gemara also brought this pasuk, and there in regards to karpef, in other words, the Gemara wanted to find an asmachta that a karpef is indeed the measurement of 70 2/3 amos by 70 2/3 amos. So the Gemara brought this pasuk, and it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the top. The Gemara brings this pasuk, Erech hachotzer meya ba'ama v'rochav chamishim bechamishim. Amra Torah tol chamishim v'sabev chamishim. There it's saying that take of the 50, we said the length is 100 of the chatzor, then take the extra 50 that's beyond the 50 width, and then take that and surround it, sabev it, around the 50 of the width. In other words, go ahead and make it like a square. From that, the Gemara learns out that you're going to get to a conclusion of 70 2/3 amos by 70 2/3 amos, which is the asmachta for a karpef. So the Gemara is asking back in our Gemara, Hare, we already learned the chamishim bechamishim, teaching us this asmachta of a karpef. Answers the Gemara, in kain leima kro chamishim chamishim. Let the pasuk say chamishim chamishim, and now also then give us the drasha to teach us the asmachta of a karpef. My chamishim bechamishim. What did it say bechamishim? Shamas mina tarti, to teach us both drashos, the asmachta over there by karpef and the asmachta over here in regards to the chevel. The Mishnah said lo pachas and lo yoser. The chevel that we're using to measure with is exactly 50, not less and not more. Tana, it's taught lo pachas mipnei shemarbe. It can't be less than 50, because let's say it's 20 amos long, then it'll be pulled taut, and it'll be pulled to the point where then it'll then marbe, it'll increase the measurement. And if it's too long, let's say it's 80 amos long, then it could sag, and it'll be then less than the proper measurement. So therefore it has to be specifically 50 amos, which is not going to be too heavy, and it's also not going to be then too stretched. Omer Rav Asi ein moididin ela bechevel shel afaskima. He says we don't measure other than with a chevel, a rope of askima. My askima, asked the Gemara, what is this type of rope? Omar Rabbi Abba, nargila, it's nargila. Asked the Gemara still, my nargila, what is nargila? What type of rope is this? Omar Rav Yaakov, dikla, dechad nevara. It's from the dekel tree that has one vine around it. You use the fibers of this vine to then make the chevel, the rope. Igedamri, though, those that has, say, a different type of version, my askima, Rabbi Abba Omar nargila. Rabbi Yaakov Omar dikla dechad navara. From here it's mashma then from the second lashon that nargila is different than the dikla dechad navara. So therefore nargila, which is really an undefined type of plant, certain plant, that's what's being used for this rope. Tanya, the Gemara brings a brayso Omar Yoshua ben Chananya, ein lecha sheyafe lemidida. There's nothing better to make measurements with than an iron chain. Because an iron chain, that you can pull and it's not going to be taut. And it'll give you an exact, precise type of measurement. Aval ma nase, what can we do? Shaharei, omra Torah ubiyodai chevel mida. We have a passage that teaches us that we make the medida, the measurement, with a chevel. I vahaksiv, asked the Gemara, uviyad ha'ish knei amida. In the hands of a person will be a measuring stick. So you mashma over here that the measurement is not made with a rope, but rather with a stick. Says the Gemara, no, hahu letarei. That's talking about when you measure a gate, the width of the gate, that's being measured, a small type of measurement, with a stick. Tani Rabbi Yosef taught the following. Shloisha chavolim heim. There are three different types of ropes. Shel magag. Magag is a type of reed. Shel netzer, that comes from an arava plant, another tree. Vishel pishton, and from flax. So now we have mishnaic sources for each of these chavolim. Shel magag lepara. The reed chevel is used for a para. We're talking about the para aduma when it was being burnt for its ashes. It says in the Mishnah, Desnan, kaftoa bechevel hamagag. When they tied the para aduma, they did so with a chevel of a reed. V'nasnua al gabe ma'arachta. Then they placed it on the fire to then burn it for its ashes. In other words, they wanted to use a reed so that it should not become tamei. Shel nitzarim lesoita. The chevel of nitzarim, which is used from the arava tree, that is used for the soita. The Mishnah tells us. Disnan ve'achar kach. Afterwards, the kohen would come, and there was a certain procedure was done for the soita. Maybe chevel hamitzri v'koisher lamala midadeho. They would tear off the top of her blouse and in order that it should not go down in an inappropriate way, they would first, before tearing it, they would tie this type of chevel of a mitzri. Again, this chevel that's made out of an arava tree, they would tie it above her breasts, so it should not come down further after it is ripped. Shel pishtan, a chevel of pishtan, of flax. Limidida, it says over here, for medida, for measuring purposes. That's what we're talking about over here for Erev Techumin. So here we see that this teaching of Rav Yosef is choylek on the teaching that we had in the name of Rav Asi before, because Rav Asi said, Ein moedin ela bechevel shel askima. And we define that as being the fibers of the dekel tree. Here we see that according to Rav Yosef, indeed, we're talking about the medida of a chevel used by flax, by pishton. So he's choylek on that which Rav Asi said before.